There is a terrifying truth about your life that you spend every single day trying to ignore. You believe you are a free individual. You believe you make your own choices, design your own future, and walk your own path. But the brutal reality is that you are a slave. You are living in a psychological prison, and the bars of your cell are made entirely of the opinions of people who do not even care about you. Look at the decisions you made this week. Look at the clothes you chose to wear, the things you chose to post online, the words you held back in that meeting, and the dreams you refuse to pursue because you are terrified of being perceived as foolish or arrogant. Your entire existence is curated for an invisible audience. You are performing a play, desperately hoping that the crowd will clap, terrified that they will boo, and slowly bleeding your spirit dry to keep them entertained. Productivity gurus and modern psychologists will tell you to just be confident. They will tell you to repeat positive affirmations in the mirror or to fake it until you make it. That is a shallow, useless lie. Confidence does not come from pretending you are great. Confidence comes from the profound biological realization that the crowd does not matter. 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire built the greatest monuments to human judgment the world has ever seen. The Colosseum, 50,000 people would sit in the comfortable, shaded stands, eating bread and drinking wine, shouting their opinions down at the men fighting in the dirt. But the Stoic philosophers understood a secret about the arena. The power never belonged to the spectators. The power belongs exclusively to the man covered in mud and blood. Today, we will dismantle the ultimate modern disease, the fear of judgment. We will explore the neuroscience of social anxiety, the evolutionary trap of your own brain, and the Roman discipline of the gladiator. But before we teach you how to deafen the noise of the crowd, I have a challenge for you. Subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments below, what is the one dream, project, or habit you have abandoned simply because you were afraid of what people would say? Your public declaration is the first step out of the stands and into the arena. Now, let us return to Julian, a man who had built massive physical discipline, but whose mind was still paralyzed by the whispers of the crowd. Chapter 1. Julian was 26 years old, and outwardly, he was succeeding. He had applied the Roman protocols. He was waking up at 5 a.m. He had eliminated his digital distractions. He had built a fortress of daily habits. But as his personal power grew, he encountered a new, insidious enemy, an enemy that did not attack his discipline, but his courage. Julian had spent months developing a brilliant new software architecture for his firm. It was a radical idea. It challenged the traditional way his company operated, but it was highly efficient and undeniable. If he pitched it, it could revolutionize his career. If he launched it on his own, it could become a massive business. But the files remained hidden in a locked folder on his computer. Every time Julian thought about presenting the idea to the senior partners, a cold, suffocating panic gripped his chest. His mind did not just doubt the code, his mind simulated the social execution. He pictured the senior engineers rolling their eyes. He pictured himself stuttering, his face turning red, the silence in the boardroom hanging in the air like a physical weight. So Julian stayed silent. He attended the meetings and nodded along with the safe, mediocre ideas. He laughed at jokes that weren't funny. He watered down his personality so that he would not stand out. He was a chameleon, blending into the gray walls of the corporate hierarchy because blending in was safe. He realized with a sickening clarity that he was not the author of his own life. He was a composite sketch of what he thought everyone else wanted him to be. He was terrified of being cringe. He was terrified of being mocked. He was a prisoner of the spectacular. He had conquered his laziness, but he had surrendered his soul to the crowd. Chapter 2. Unable to sleep, carrying the heavy, rotting weight of his own cowardice, Julian returned to the stonemason's yard in the early hours of the morning. He found Lucian, the elderly master, sitting alone on a wooden bench, slowly sharpening a heavy iron chisel against a wet whetstone. The rhythmic, metallic scraping echoed in the quiet dawn. "Lucian, I am a coward," Julian confessed, his voice thick with shame. "I have built the discipline to do the work, but I do not have the courage to show it to the world. I have an idea that could change my life. But the thought of the senior partners laughing at it, the thought of my peers rejecting me, it paralyzes my tongue. I'm terrified of the crowd." Lucian did not stop sharpening the chisel. He kept his eyes on the iron. "You suffer from the oldest disease of the civilized world, Julian," the old man said. "You have mistaken the stands for the arena. Lucian set the chisel down and looked at the young man. Do you know how the gladiatorial games worked? In Rome, 50,000 citizens would pack into the Flavian amphitheater. They would wear their finest togas, they would eat imported figs and drink wine. They would scream, they would insult, they would give the thumbs up or the thumbs down. They felt like gods. But the Stoics knew the truth. Lucian continued. The crowd risks absolutely nothing. They sit in the shade, protected from the heat, protected from the swords. They do not bleed, they do not sweat, they do not face death. Therefore, their opinions are completely worthless. The only man whose soul holds any weight is the man standing in the dirt, staring into the jaws of the lion. Lucian stepped closer to Julian, your colleagues, your managers, the people on your screens. They are spectators. They sit in the comfortable seats of mediocrity and they cast judgments on the people who are actually trying to build something. Your fear comes from believing that the spectator has authority over the gladiator. It is madness. You are bowing to people who have never stepped into the mud. Chapter 3. But how do I stop feeling it? Julian pleaded. The fear is a physical reaction. My heart races, my throat closes. I cannot just turn off the fear of judgment by thinking about it. You are right, Lucian said. The body does not learn through philosophy. The body only learns through friction. Lucian walked over to a pile of discarded, useless rubble in the corner of the yard. He picked up a jagged, ugly, misshapen chunk of dark grey slag stone. It was heavy, covered in dirt, and entirely worthless. He walked back and shoved the heavy rock into Julian's chest. Take this, Lucian commanded. I want you to carry this rock into the very center of the city marketplace. I want you to stand perfectly still in the middle of the busiest intersection, holding this useless rock in your hands, and I want you to do absolutely nothing for 3 hours. Julian stared at him in horror.
What? Why?
People will think I have lost my mind. They will stare at me. They will laugh. It makes no sense. Exactly, Lucian said. It makes no sense. It is foolish. It is humiliating, and you will endure it. You will let them look. You will let them laugh, you will let them judge, you will not explain yourself, you will not defend yourself, you will stand in the dirt of the arena, and you will let the crowd throw their invisible stones until you realize that they cannot break your skin. Julian's ego screamed in agony. The thought of standing in the crowded Roman square, holding a piece of garbage, while the citizens whispered and pointed, sent a shock wave of adrenaline through his system. But he looked at the old master's unyielding eyes. He took a deep breath, gripped the ugly stone, and walked toward the city. When Julian arrived at the market, it was teeming with life. Merchants were shouting, patricians were walking in fine silk, and soldiers were patrolling. Julian found the dead center of the square he planted, his feet. He held the ugly rock in front of his chest. The first 20 minutes were absolute psychological torture. A group of young men walked by, pointed at him, and laughed. A wealthy merchant shook his head in disgust and muttered an insult. Julian's face burned with intense heat. His heart hammered against his ribs. His amygdala was firing every alarm bell in his nervous system, screaming, "Drop the rock, run away, conform, hide." But he did not move. He held the rock, he endured the stares, and then, in the second hour, a profound biological shift occurred. Julian realized he was still breathing. His heart rate began to slow down. He looked at the people who had laughed at him 20 minutes earlier. They had moved on. They were buying bread, arguing with vendors, living their own lives. Their judgment had lasted exactly 5 seconds, and then it had vanished into the wind. The crowd's laughter had not killed him. The stares had not broken his bones. He was standing in the exact same spot, completely unharmed. The humiliation was a ghost. The invisible audience had absolutely no power over reality. By the end of the 3rd hour, Julian felt an overwhelming, euphoric sense of absolute freedom. He stood in the chaotic square, holding the ugly stone, and he smiled. The cage was open. Chapter 4. What Julian experienced in the market is not just a philosophical breakthrough. It is the deliberate hacking of a primitive neurological survival system. Modern evolutionary psychology and neuroscience have mapped exactly why you care so much about what other people think. It is a phenomenon known as the sociometer theory in the primitive world. 10,000 years ago, human beings could not survive alone. If you were hunting in the wilderness and the tribe decided they did not like you, they would exile you. And exile in the Paleolithic era meant certain death by starvation or predators, because social acceptance was a literal matter of life. And death, your brain evolved a highly sensitive alarm system, the anterior cingulate cortex, the exact same region of your brain that processes physical pain like a broken leg or a burn, is the exact same region that processes social rejection when you imagine your coworkers laughing at your idea. Your brain does not view it as a harmless social dynamic. It views it as a mortal threat. Your amygdala dumps cortisol into your bloodstream. Your body goes into a state of fight or flight. You are biologically programmed to be a coward in order to stay safely inside the tribe. But we no longer live in the primitive wilderness. The opinions of people on the internet, the whispers of your co-workers, the judgments of strangers on the street, none of these things threaten your survival. The biological alarm system is outdated. It is firing mortal warnings for phantom threats. You are using a caveman's brain to navigate a modern world, and until you expose your nervous system to controlled, deliberate social discomfort, just as Julian did with the stone, your brain will continue to treat the laughter of the crowd as a death sentence. You must train your amygdala to realize that the tribe's rejection is completely harmless. Chapter 5. The next day, Julian returned to the yard, the heavy slagstone still in his hands. He set it down on the workbench. His eyes were clear, sharp, and totally unburdened. "They laughed at me," Julian said, "and it did not matter, I was untouched." Lucian nodded, sweeping dust from the bench. "You have learned the greatest lesson of the Stoic Epictetus. You have learned the dichotomy of control. The gap between your potential and your execution is filled entirely by your desire to control things that are not yours to control." Lucian explained that the human ego seeks to manage the minds of others. We try to curate our words perfectly so that the crowd will interpret us exactly how we want to be interpreted. We try to manipulate their respect. We try to manage their applause. "This is an impossible war," Lucian said. "You cannot control the minds of the spectators. If you present a masterpiece, some will call it garbage out of jealousy. If you present garbage, some will applaud out of pity. Their reaction belongs to them. Your action belongs to you. When you ask the question, will they like this? You have opened the gates of your fortress and surrendered your sword to the enemy. The gladiator does not ask if the crowd will like his sword swing. The gladiator asks only, is this the correct swing? You must eliminate the gap of approval. You must replace the desire to be liked with the absolute commitment to your own integrity. You must practice amor fati, the love of fate. Love the applause and love the booing equally, because both are just noise from the stands. The only sound that matters is the iron of your own sword. Chapter 6. The ultimate test arrived on a Thursday afternoon at Julian's firm. The senior partners had called a massive meeting with all the lead engineers and directors to discuss the failing infrastructure of their primary project. The room was filled with 30 of the most arrogant, highly paid, and judgmental minds in the company. The tension in the boardroom was suffocating. The senior director asked for solutions one by one. The older engineers offered safe, highly political, mediocre patches. They were protecting their egos. They were playing to the crowd. Julian sat at the long mahogany table. He felt the familiar biological spike. The amygdala sounded the alarm. He knew that if he presented his radical software architecture, he would be exposing himself to brutal criticism. He was the youngest man in the room. The alpha engineers would try to tear him apart. The old Julian would have stayed silent. He would have swallowed his genius to stay safe in the tribe. But Julian closed his eyes. He pictured the ugly slagstone in the marketplace. He pictured the screaming crowd in the Colosseum. He took a deep breath, effectively shutting off his sympathetic nervous system, and he stood up. "I have a solution," Julian said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "But it requires us to scrap the current model entirely." He walked to the front of the room and connected his tablet to the projection screen. He began to lay out his architecture. The reaction was immediate. One of the senior engineers scoffed loudly. Another rolled his eyes. The director frowned, crossing his arms, looking deeply skeptical. The crowd was throwing stones, but Julian did not flinch. He did not stutter. He entered a state of mushin, no mind. He did not care about their scoffs. He did not seek their approval. He simply presented the objective truth of the mathematics and the code when they attacked his logic. He deflected calmly. When they insulted his lack of experience, he ignored the insult and redirected them to the data. He fought not to win their affection. He fought simply to present the truth. He was covered in the mud of their judgment, and he was completely at peace. By the end of the 20-minute presentation, the room was dead silent. The arrogance of the senior engineers had been crushed by the undeniable, unshakable reality of Julian's work. The director stared at the projection for a long time. "This is highly unorthodox," the director finally said, "but it is flawless. We execute Julian's protocol, starting tomorrow." Chapter 7. That evening, Julian walked out of the corporate building and into the bustling Roman street. The air was cold and crisp. Several colleagues patted him on the back as they left. They praised his brilliance. They told him how brave he was to stand up to the senior partners. The crowd was finally applauding him. They were throwing roses, but as Julian walked home, he realized something profound. The applause felt exactly the same as the laughter in the marketplace. It was completely hollow. It carried no weight. He did not feel a rush of ego. He did not feel superior. He felt quiet, because he realized that his identity was no longer tied to the outcome. He was no longer a chameleon shifting colors to please the eyes of the spectators. He was the gladiator. When you build the iron citadel in your mind, you realize that the opinions of the world are just weather. A storm may rage outside. The wind may howl. The rain may beat against the stone. But inside the fortress, the fire remains warm. The walls do not shake.